Alright, so week one, learning the ukulele. Okay, so probably the most important thing is to make sure that it is tuned. And different ukuleles, depending on the build quality, hold tuning better. I'm not really entirely familiar with how stable ukulele tuners can be, but I would imagine that it's always probably a good idea to tune your uke before you actually play it. So for those who have an electronic tuner or have a piano where they can tune to ear, this is tuned to a G, this is tuned to a C, this is an E, and this is an A. Which on the piano we have the G, the C, the E, and then the A. So strumming this as it is, if you're looking into music theory terms, this is like a C6 chord. Now what intrigues me coming from a piano standpoint is that here and here you have what's called a fifth. In guitar terms you can think of it as a power chord. So that basically means that I can actually just play chords by mashing on the, I'm not sure what the numbering is, but if it's the same as guitar, the 1, 2, 3, and 4th string. So if I fret down, then I get 1, 4, 5 chords. And I don't think there's as much need to do kind of that over the next step. It seems like a little bit of overkill, and it doesn't sound that great either because I haven't really practiced it. So I think that's probably an easy go-to place. For the root of a chord, if I know that this is C, then I'll have to kind of count D, E, E, F. So if I wanted to do an F chord, I'd have to bar everything down here. So meaning I use my pointer finger to squish down on the 3rd and 4th strings to get those two. So I think that's one little revelation that should help me start conceptualizing the uke. So I remember back when I was performing with a friend of mine who is a full-time ukulele player, he had mentioned that the tunings of the ukulele are actually like the top 4 strings of a guitar. So this would be like the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings of a guitar. So that also means that I would basically be able to take any chord that I know on guitar, and by cutting out the fattest 2 strings, and still be able to play those chords on the uke. So this would be like a G chord because I'm missing these right here. The D chord. C chord. So I think that will help me get started from a guitarist perspective. In terms of how it actually feels, I think that it'll be alright. I mean, certain ones I'm definitely like just kind of used to playing a certain way, like an E minor chord, just having the rest of those notes there. But I think it's a easy adjustment, like this is an E minor. And then with the pointer finger that becomes an E major. But the other problem is that while I think of this as a G chord, it's not really an actual G chord because the ukulele is tuned differently. Because this one is an A instead of an E. So I would have to transcribe everything. I suppose that would be up a fifth, if that means anything for those who might have some music theory knowledge. So I think that that's enough to get me started on learning a few of the basic chords. If I know already some guitar chords, then I can go through just trying out a few of the guitar chords and trying them out on the ukulele, see how they sound, and just get right into strumming some chords to songs. Now, from a complete beginner's standpoint, somebody who maybe has never played any other instrument and just wants to get started on a ukulele, I think there are a lot of tutorials out there, so I'm not going to go over the basics of how to play because I think there are probably a lot of people who could teach the basics better and probably teach you more proper technique, if more proper is even grammatically correct. I think it is. So one of my favorite things to start off with, as with any of my beginner guitar students, is something simple that's very melodic and sticks to one string. So Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I know it's a kid's tune, but it's great because you can learn it with just one finger. Or you can make it a little bit more of an exercise by forcing yourself to use different fingers to fret the notes. Because a lot of beginner players, they don't like to use their pinky because, well, when else do you use your pinky except when you're making pinky swears, which is not exactly, you know, a daily occurrence, I would imagine. So Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, 0 0 7 7 9 9 7 5 5 4 4 2 2 1. And I think that's a good exercise to try on all of the strings, just so that you kind of get a sense for where the strings are, how the ukulele is spaced. So now I'm going to try it on the second string. 5 5 4 4 2 2 1. Then on the C string. Boy, isn't that fun. But I think for most people starting out, chords don't really make a lot of sense unless you kind of inherently get where chords fit into songs. I think it's more important to start with melody and start hearing how you can make music with the instrument that you have. Here where you got the higher notes, or I suppose and the lower notes. So this is about as low as the ukulele will go, and I suppose that's about as high as the ukulele will go as well. Now, in terms of actual playing, I'm used to playing on finger-style guitar. I don't really do the nail thing, but it feels actually pretty good just kind of using my fingers. In terms of strumming, I'm not a big advocate of picks just because I don't really practice with them, and I don't like the idea of needing to have like a little piece of plastic everywhere I go in order to play an instrument. So even with strumming, basically what I do is use these two fingers here on the downstroke, so I keep my hands very relaxed and just kind of on the downstroke, and use my thumbnail on the upstrokes. Like that. And in terms of picking, I suppose I use a modification of classical guitar technique where I have one finger planted on the last string, and then basically using these fingers for primarily all the individual note picking. Something like that. And what I find a lot of beginner players doing on guitar, at least, is using this hand to support the instrument, and then using this hand to kind of pick, which I suppose is okay in terms of actually making sound, but later on it is going to be very, very limiting, and you're going to have to kind of start all over again in terms of actually making sounds on it. And if you wanted to switch over to fingerstyle playing, it is going to be a big change. So what I'm doing in terms of posture, which I don't know if this is even correct. Hopefully anybody who is a more seasoned ukulele player can correct me. But I have the uke, this part of it propped up on my right leg because I'm right-handed. I have this part of my arm just kind of holding this part up, so that I don't need this hand to hold up the ukulele. And I think that that's really important so that you have freedom to kind of move around rather than having it, you know, held by this hand, which can be very, very limiting and doesn't really help with the neck flexibility. So I try and be able to hold the ukulele up with just one hand so that the rest of it will be free to be able to kind of play away. Alright, so that is week one from all approaches. Well, not all of the approaches, but at least from the approaches from a guitarist and a pianist standpoint, as well as somebody who I suppose would be a complete beginner. Alright, so that's week one from the approach of a pianist, a guitarist, as well as somebody who is just beginning. A lot of these are just rambling thoughts, but I think this is a really cool instrument, and it's one that I've been wanting to try for a while, and it's really awesome that Journey Instruments let me use one of their instruments to start experimenting on the ukulele. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and share and subscribe to my channel. And if you really, really like what I do on my channel, then please consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. For as little as $1 per video, you can make a really big difference into helping me churn out more videos and of higher quality. So that'd be really, really meaningful. But regardless of whether or not you pay, I'm happy to come out with these videos. But those who support me do get little bits of perks and those type of things. So hopefully I can make it worth it for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.